Hey golfers, and welcome back to the Second Swing YouTube channel. It's a fantastic day once again on the channel. We're back for another live at lunch. Of course, every noon Central Time on Tuesdays, we will be live on the YouTube channel. And today we have a very, very special guest because we're continuing this theme of really telling you guys the story of Titleist GT. We've done some testing, we've done swing reports on the channel, but now we want to dive even further into the technology, into what makes Titleist GT so good. And so today we have a special guest. It is Stephanie Luttrell. Stephanie is the Director of Metalwoods Product Development at Titleist, and she's been gracious enough to give us some time today to go through what makes GT so great. And so, Stephanie, thank you for joining. Thank you for giving us the time and kind of give us an update on how things have been since the launch of GT began. And I know you're kind of still right in the midst of it right now.
Thanks, Drew. I'm happy to be here with everybody in the Second Swing crew as well. We're off to a fantastic start with GT Metals. We started the process, our launch process, with our PGA Tour launch at the Memorial in the early June timeframe, and gradually went to all of our global tours. We went the following week to the LPGA Tour, then the week after that to the DP World Tour in Amsterdam, and we've done some on-course and staff ambassador fitting events now, and the reception thus far to GT drivers and fairways has been fantastic. Players are seeing the added increased speed, they're seeing the spin and launch consistency, and they're seeing downrange distance, and it's led to a lot of momentum going into public fittings, which started on August 1st.
Yeah, I think a lot of, at least our team, was wondering how, anything could really be better than TSR, because TSR was so successful for a couple of years. And so we'll get into some of that and what's changed. But I know that was a big question mark that our fitters had, was really what could even be improved. And so the fact that you're getting those responses, and of course, our fitters are saying the same things, is that it's been a tremendous start so far in the fittings. And so before we get started, I wanted to ask you as well, we do this a lot when we have guests on here, is what clubs are in Stephanie's bag?
Yeah, well, right now, of course, I'm gaming the new GTs. I've got a GT2 10-degree driver. I've got a GT2 18-degree that I kind of actually build a little long, and I use it as a 4-wood. And then
Okay.
I've got a GT2 21-degree fairway wood. And then I'm still playing the TSR1 hybrid. So I've got a 23 and a 26 there. And then I transition into T150 irons. So I play a 6 through pitching wedge there. And then Vokey SM10s and a Newport mallet rounded out. And then, of course, the golf ball Pro V1X.
Right. Yeah, that sounds a lot like a bag that I think a lot of Titleist loyalists would like to have right there. A lot of the newest technology, and I imagine some great results out on the golf course with especially those GTs in the bag. So we got to dive in here, because for the Titleist Speed Project was, I know, kind of the focus the last, it's been 5, 6, 7 years of sort of Titleist metalwood development, right? And now we've got kind of this new branding, if you will, in that sense, with GT, generational technology. What exactly does that mean, and what are golfers getting when they put a GT into the bag?
Well, first and foremost, they're getting the best generation of drivers and fairway woods that Titleist has ever produced. With every generation, our Metalwoods design and development team, we're always looking at how we can push the limits of performance. And at Titleist, our design strategy is not really about elevating just one performance metric or parameter. So, for instance, looking at inertia and trying to drive that up to 10K. But it's really about how do we deliver and really achieve optimal performance in all buckets. So it's looking at club head speed, it's looking at ball speed, it's looking at launch and spin, trajectory, overall consistency, and then having best-in-class fitting tools. In GT, it's generational technology for us that's delivering in all of those areas. And we're really excited about the performance gains that we've seen versus TSR.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely something we said too about distance gains, but also kind of performance on miss hits as well. I know that's been sort of the big push, I guess, in the industry as a whole. But the way each the way it's done throughout the industry is different, and you guys have some very unique ways of achieving that as well. So I wanted to touch on first the seamless thermoform crown. Kind of some big words there for someone like me, but what does that entail? What does that mean? What is achieved by designing it that way, and then the benefits that golfers will get?
It's definitely a mouthful, right, to get those
Right.
words out. But well, really with GT, where we started with GT and what makes it unique, and in that we're continuing to build upon those platforms of how do we deliver on all of those parameters. So with GT, it started with club head speed. Some of you might be familiar that a few years ago we brought in an aerodynamicist to help us research club head shaping and how we could drive more speed for all players through head shape and reducing drag and improving aerodynamics. And GT, we had some new head shapes that really allowed us to unlock more club head speed. But when we started to really study them and look at what those shapes would yield from a mass property standpoint, we ended up in a position that those shapes would have netted us higher center gravities that would have led to overspinning trajectory and shorter total distances. So we challenged our engineering team to look at how we could really engineer the construction differently. And it led us down a path of our proprietary matrix polymer and our seamless thermoform crown. And I've got kind of a show and tell break apart way to show you
Oh,
guys
awesome.
for those that have your cameras on. But basically what the seamless thermoform crown is it brings together our new material that's never been used in golf club head design before, which is the proprietary matrix polymer, and it allows us to essentially deliver a design that is fully filled on this crown. And part of the reason that that was important to us as a brand with Titleist is that we know that when golfers set up behind the golf ball, that the first and foremost thing is that we want them to have confidence in the address position. Our lead PGA Tour representative, JJ Van Wiesenbeck, he always came back to me. He said, you know, when I talked to Charlie Hoffman about the way that the driver looks in the address position, he said, the last thing I want is for Charlie not to be able to put a driver in play because of the way that it looks. So our challenge as an engineering and as an R&D team was, well, how do we deliver this new construction that essentially has multiple pieces? It's a multi-material construction for the first time for us, but how do we do it in a way that is authentically Titleist? And for us, that meant that we wanted to make it seamless. We wanted a driver that looked like a Titleist driver should look in the address position, and we've been able to accomplish that with GT.
Yeah, I think there's certainly that's one of the favorite things you hear about Titleist drivers and people that play have played TSR over the years was just how clean the drivers looked, and you guys definitely didn't stray away from that. And I think that's only going to help golfers get into GT is knowing that they still get that same classic Titleist look that they love, but they still get this new performance that comes with these subtle changes, I guess, subtle changes from, you know, that perspective at address, right? But obviously they're big changes in terms of what happens on the interior and the construction of things. So I wanted to also mention split mass construction. And then I know like the speed ring VFT, that variable face thickness was also in TSR, but how are those things added to the performance of GT?
Yeah, so as we look at this breakaway, essentially, now we've talked about the crown construction and that it's made out of the new material. And that material is allowing us to save discretionary mass, and it's allowing us to distribute the mass differently than we have in prior generations. And so when we say split mass construction, what that means for us is that we're able to isolate center gravities lower and more forward through discretionary mass being low in the forward portion of the head. And you can see it in this GT3 head that we've positioned our track system now low and forward in that head. But then we take that remainder of the discretionary mass and we load it into the aft portion of the head. And that balancing effect of it is what gives us a great center gravity property to promote high launch and low spin, but also isolating the remainder of that mass towards the aft section and splitting it as far away as we can is allowing us to maintain inertial stability, which ultimately leads to great ball speed consistency across the face, but also launch and spin consistency up and down the face.
Yeah, and you mentioned the movement of the, I guess on the GT3, the weight track. I think there's been some movement of the other weights as well in the other heads, and it also seems like they're more aerodynamically positioned, if that's maybe the right phrase. And so you mentioned, we've already talked a little bit the aerodynamics and you know, adding that club speed, but it seems like that was also a big part of GT as well, was almost smoothing the club head out with those weight positions, because it seems like they're almost more embedded in the club head than maybe past models. Was that on purpose, and is that for aerodynamics?
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely trying to do everything possible to eliminate any steps, to eliminate and minimize features on the sole. So you can see the sole designs and the industrial design of the GT drivers. It's very clean. And also, as you mentioned, the positioning of the system. So GT3 now having the track system low and forward, we've developed a closed system that actually has windows that you can look through to identify the weight position and what the mass of it is, because not only do we allow center gravity fitting in GT3, but we also have head weight fitting, and that head weight fitting extends to GT2 and GT4 as well. So us being able to kind of create this closed system allows air to travel across those features without having turbulence and without interrupting the flow, which is helping us to reduce drag.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that's been another common kind of compliment, if you will, from the fitters has been just how much smoother those kind of weights are positioned and those different, I guess, movements are to help golfers with just a little bit of that swing speed that can ultimately give them some more distance. So, all right, now it's kind of the fun time here because we can go through each of the different models. You've mentioned GT3, GT2, and GT4. So let's kind of start to differentiate them a little bit. Let's go through each one of the drivers, GT2, 3, and 4. How are they different? What are the different shapes, builds, and technologies within them?
Well, GT2, it's a modern 460 profile. Really builds upon some of the executions of what we did with TSR2. So it has a great swept toe, which gives the perception and the look of a visually open head, but it sits very square in that address position. I like to say that GT2, it's that all-around playability golf club. So if you're a player that has tendency to miss it all over the face, I know I'm one of those that I just don't have the opportunity to play and practice as much as I used to. GT2 is the golf club for you. It's our deepest center of gravity. It's our highest inertia product within the lineup. So it's the most stable, most consistent, but it also generates a great high launch, low spin trajectory. So if you're that player, GT2 is a great option for you. And then transitioning to GT3, GT3, I like to say that it's the most globally recognized tour platform in terms of a head shape. So it's a very traditional 455cc to 460cc loft dependent profile, very traditional pair profile. GT3 offers center gravity fitting heel toe. And the reason why center gravity fitting is really important to have within the GT lineup is that we find that with some players, that we can really unlock more speed and more distance through center gravity heel toe fitting. So it's important to have that within the lineup. How that works is you can unlock performance and speed by aligning CG more with impact location, which can really deliver, momentum and physics behind that impact and bring more speed to the player that way. You can also use center gravity fitting to reduce a miss and to take one side of the golf course out of play, which frees a player up to swing more aggressively. So we find great success with fitting with CG on GT3. It is, when you look at our split on tour, we do have a slight tick up with GT3 versus GT2, but they're very close to one another. There's probably about 55% to 45% in terms of the tour use. Both are great platforms. GT3 versus GT2, you will see that it's a little bit lower spin than GT2, which allows us just another fitting tool in the arsenal for a player that is looking for a slight spin reduction. And then as you transition to GT4, that product and its position in the lineup is really to satisfy that player that needs aggressive spin reduction. We like to call it our ultra low spin killer. So it has center gravity fitting capability as well, but it's in the fore aft orientation. So what that allows you to do is in the stock or the featured configuration, it comes with a heavyweight forward. So it's really there to promote for that player that has a downward angle of attack or spin over 3,000 RPMs. This product really is an option for you to consider because it allows you to reduce your spin and increase your distance through that and with that fitting capability. But I like to say that GT4 versus what we had in TSR4, it has even more versatility than what we saw because of how we've repositioned all of the CGs in the lineup for GT drivers. Now GT4, when you go and you move that weight from the forward position to the aft position and flip it, essentially, you end up with what I like to call a GT 2.5. So if you're a player that needs launch and spin and forgiveness kind of between a GT3 and a GT2, and you actually prefer a slightly smaller footprint, the GT4 is a very traditional 430cc pair profile. So essentially it looks like a smaller version of a GT3. That option is a great one for you to consider as well within the lineup.
Yeah, I actually kind of want. So we had a question submitted from a viewer ahead of time through a direct message on Instagram that I was going to say for the end, but since we're talking about GT4 and sort of the performance there, I wanted to ask it now. He says GT4 seems to be more forgiving from what I understand versus past models. I am a new golfer, but I have lots of driver spin. Could GT4 work for me? So it sounds like a lot of what you were just mentioning could be applicable for this golfer.
Yeah, absolutely. That product, obviously, it is positioned in our lineup to be the low spin one. So for him, I would suggest for him or for her to go and test GT4 versus GT3 and to really seek out the optimization that we have with the center gravity fitting tools in both models.
Yeah, I mean it's clear that's the really cool part about. I mean, you talk about all of Titleist, right? I know I don't, this is GT focused, but even like it's been a blessing for our fitters to have all the loft, grind, bounce options with the wedges, right? And so now in the woods, you have all these different adjustability possibilities. With the SureFit hosel obviously is fantastic. You have the 16 loft and lie settings. Then you have the center of gravity adjustments with GT3, and then the weight adjustments with GT4. So there's so much there that allows our fitters to truly dial somebody in. And so to the point of this golfer Pete, who sent that DM to us, he's a golfer that we're seeing a lot more of, is somebody that's new to the game, but might be kind of, for maybe lack of a better term, a very athletic player that can swing pretty fast, but just generates a lot of spin. And so the result then is somebody that might fit into a GT4 with that weight back to a little bit more forgiveness, yet still get that low spin. So you'll love to see those types of players finding something within the series.
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason why we have all three models. We know that there are players that need discrete launch and spin trajectory differences. And so we seek to satisfy within the entire lineup that.
Sure. Yeah. And now I kind of wanted to get into the Fairway Woods, because that seems like a category conversation that is evolving a little bit in golf, where I even noticed that in your bag, right, you don't have that 15-degree standard model, and so, or I guess standard, quote unquote 3-wood loft, and so it seems like that is evolving a little bit into what woods are in players' bags. So we've got two models here, GT2 and GT3. Can you give us the rundown on those two?
Yeah, well, I would like to say that first and foremost, the Fairway Woods, I would say, are the surprise and the delight of the lineup. I think players that have gotten to hit GT Fairway Woods, those are the most surprising in terms of that our design goals with the Fairway Woods were expressly about flight, feel, and form. And so the Tom Bennett, who leads our category for that on our Metalwood team, he worked with our design engineers to execute our lowest center gravities that we've ever achieved. He's done it with a new L-cup face technology, which is delivering better ball speeds and better spin performance on low face hits, which gives better overall distance consistency. And we're employing our PMP crown into the Fairway Woods as well, which that's helping us to hit that low CG. The most surprising thing when players experience them is that you see that they flight up in the air. So they're in new trajectory windows that are really unexpected to players. And we've never heard, and when we seek feedback from our tour players as well as from the golfing public, the resounding statement is 3-woods and Fairway Woods are not the easiest to hit, right? They're the hardest golf clubs to hit. They're the longest golf club that you hit off the turf. So anything that we could do to elevate trajectory was something that was going to be a positive. And that's what we've done on both GT3 and GT2. Where they differentiate from one another is really in their form and is in their fitting technology. So GT2 is that larger footprint, all around playability. So it's great for players that are a little bit shallower through the attack condition, that are more of a sweeper in terms of their technique.
Sure.
Really good from a variety of turf and lie conditions. With its new low CG, though, we've been able to elevate that flight. So I'm a player that generally I don't spin it very much. much, which is why you heard that I put an 18 degree in at a little longer length and play it as a 4 wood versus a 5 wood. But in the past, I've also played a 16.5. So those two options are great for those players that are kind of on the lower speed, lower spin spectrum. GT3, as you look at its position, it's a little deeper face than where we've been in the past, very traditional pair profile, and it has center gravity fitting capability. So just like GT3 on the driver, we find that aligning CG with impact location or taking one side of the golf course out of the play can really help players unlock more speed, better trajectory. And we're really having great success with these products on tour. They're almost evenly split between GT3 and GT2
Really?
in terms of tour usage. And so both really offer unique positioning and really having performance choice in the fairway wood category. It really opens up opportunity for players to find their best fit and their best performance with GT fairway woods.
Sure, yeah, and we actually have a few questions here in the YouTube live chat I wanted to get to that are kind of that relate to our discussion here on the fairway woods. And so our first one here was talking about higher lofted woods. So how did you think about the more higher lofted woods? What was the focus for, say, 5 wood and 7 wood? What do you do differently there versus maybe your traditional 3 wood to help get that ball into the air?
Yeah, well, we design every single loft model uniquely. So each one has a unique center gravity position. So it's not as though you design a 15 degree fairway wood and it's exactly the same. So we look at shape as they transition and as they flow down so that they can blend seamlessly into hybrids and utility irons, long irons. As you look at designing a 5 wood or you look at designing a 7 wood, those heads, because they're built at shorter lengths, they're heavier. So you have more discretionary mass to work with to really meet those center gravity goals. It's really about optimizing launch and spin, that you don't want it to be, too hot. It needs to have the appropriate amount of spin to distance gap. And so we do run consumer testing at our Titleist Performance Institute to validate the center gravity positions and the performance of those models. And we've seen amazing uptick in usage on tour as well. I like to call it 7 wood nation, that, you look at players like Max Homa that are putting 7 woods in play and they're finding great success. And a lot of times they can be week in, week out. It's golf course dependent in terms of, I like to call them trunk clubs, and that they're able to make that decision based on golf course setup, whether or not they need something that really elevates and has that shot stopping power into the green. And those high lofted fairway woods are giving players great options to seek out that performance.
Sure, yeah. And then we did have one more too. This is from Danny, kind of still in the fairway wood discussion, but asking, so, last year, or I guess last generation, there was that TSR2 Plus, and then kind of now with the GT2, you have sort of that strong option to play at 13.5. So kind of what went into that discussion, and what is there available with that strong loft option of GT2?
Yeah, no, it's a great question from Danny. So good observation that he made already. So in TSR2, we did design what we call TSR2 Plus, and that was really born out of the feedback. We meet on a weekly basis with our R&D teams, with our tour group, and really seek out the feedback. And we saw a trend that we saw more and more players using 3 woods predominantly off the tee, not necessarily hitting them into greens. And so they were looking for something larger footprint. And as we started to study that product further, it allowed us to make something a little deeper, a little lower from a center of gravity perspective. And we saw an overwhelming trend towards players moving to that type of product in the 13.5 category. So when we considered GT and we thought, well, where do we want to go with offering a strong lofted option? You see that the only strong lofted option we offer in the GT lineup in the 13.5 is in the GT2, and it's based off from the TSR2 Plus chassis. So it has that larger footprint size. We know that the players that are using this golf club are predominantly using it off the tee, but it needs to have exceptional playability off the turf too. So Tom and the team of design engineers have really done a great job with shaping the GT2 13.5 to make it that all-around playability that really maximizes performance off the tee for those players that are using it off the tee, but also delivers performance off the turf.
Sure. Yeah. It sounds like it's, like I said, the usage and sort of the best practice, if you will, of fairway wood seems to be changing quite a bit for golfers. And so, there's a lot of players, like I'm kind of one of those players that'll play my 3 wood predominantly off the tee. Rarely do I need it off the turf. And so that's where something like this could be very useful. And so there is that conversation's changing, and it's really cool to see Titleist definitely adapting to that and understanding that kind of there's a need out there for golfers looking for something like that. And so I kind of wanted to wrap up. Well, I'd say wrap up, but we talked in depth about the drivers. We talked in depth about the Fairway Woods. Is there a particular feature or a particular tech that so far you've been receiving kind of the most feedback of that might be Titleist's favorite part? Or is it, obviously you guys love all of it, right? But is there anything in particular that is just, blowing people away out there as they test these out?
I think you're asking me to like pick my favorite child in the technologies.
Yeah. Probably not fair by me, but it was on my list of questions to ask you, and so I'm gonna go ahead and do it.
No, I think when you look at what allowed us to unlock performance in GT, it comes down to the construction. It comes down to the proprietary matrix polymer, which is allowing us to deliver Titleist sound and feel in a multi-material construction. The way that we've been able to construct the head now to distribute the mass is allowing us to achieve center gravity and inertias that we have not been able to achieve in an all-titanium construction. And that's really the key. That's allowing us to deliver new speed and new trajectory to all players. And so it really comes down to the construction was the key, and the material was our ability to unlock that performance in a Titleist authentic way, that it looks, sounds, and feels like a Titleist driver should. So we're exceptionally proud of that feature and being first to the market with this new material.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely something unique, but I also love too that Titleist has been able to keep that classic Titleist appearance, right, of their drivers and fairways still, despite making these changes under the hood, I guess. So as we start to wrap up here, I do ask any viewers if you have any more questions for Stephanie. We kind of have this window now for a little bit of Q&A here. I know there's a couple yet in the chat I'm going to get to here. Here's a good one from Robert. I think you addressed this a little bit at the beginning, but he says it seems like there was a big focus on high MOI kind of in the industry the last year or so with Metalwoods. And so how did Titleist want to follow that focus while still maintaining, obviously you guys are, I guess achieving what you guys want to achieve with your woods, while also maybe chasing that higher MOI stuff?
Yeah, I like to say there's an appropriate amount of inertia in that. When we look at data that we have from consumers, so our golf ball R&D team goes out and it seeks data and collects data from a huge amount of users when we're doing golf ball fittings. And across that landscape of golf ball fittings, we find that about 80 to 85% of impacts are within a half inch of face center on drivers. So inertial benefits, and as you think about designing drivers and really delivering maximum performance under the majority of use conditions, designing a driver to the USGA limit for IYY, or meaning heel toe inertia, or IXX, high-low inertia, there's an appropriate amount. And so as we sought to really seek to deliver consistency performance, it's all about center gravities that unlock speed and unlock launch and spin, but also keeping those inertial values at the right level so that the products are exceptionally consistent. And when I think about the tour and the most resounding feedback that I've heard from GT from the tour, it has been the launch and the spin and the speed consistency. A player like Cam Young was a great example when I was working with him and JJ during his first fit. Cam's a guy that when he bombs it out of the middle, he's well over 180 miles an hour driver ball speed, launches it around 10 to 11 degrees and 2,000 to 2,200 RPMs. Pretty much perfect. But
that sounds like it's ideal numbers right there.
Yeah, when he wants to really hit a control shot, he tends to hit kind of a little heel cut out of the heel side of the face. And with his TSR3, what he observed in performance was that his ball speed would obviously drop with that. He'd also see that his spin would elevate to being upwards of around 3,000 to 3,200 RPMs. Because of the way that we've designed the faces of GT drivers with the speed ring and the VFT, as well as the way that we've positioned our center gravities lower and more forward, but keeping that inertia high. With GT3, what he experienced was when he was hitting those heel side cuts, his ball speeds were within a half a mile an hour of what they were on center face, which is amazing from a ball speed retention standpoint. And he saw that his spins were only 2,400 to 2,600. So for what that meant for him was that he could go to that control shot more often without leaving distance on the table. Now he's bringing kind of that control shot up really at almost at parity with what his longest drives are. And that for him was a no-brainer as to why he put GT straight into the bag, and he's seen great success with it this summer already.
Yeah, that is one thing we've seen in testing too. You know, you can check out our string report videos, or even we've got a few more kind of comparison type videos that are going to be up on our YouTube channel here shortly. But as in our testing, just like what you said, those hits off the heel or maybe even off the toe, they are much closer to what that middle face contact would be, maybe versus other drivers or previous Titleist drivers. So clearly the performance is there, and we're seeing it in testing, obviously in fittings as well. There was one other follow-up question as well in the chat here about kind of that GT4 and sort of what you mentioned as a GT 2.5 or 2.5. This person's asking, is it the spin that falls between the two, or more the forgiveness, or is it both? That kind of splits it there with that weight back between GT2 and GT3.
Yeah, it absolutely falls kind of from a launch and spin characteristic as well as from an inertial stability forgiveness level, that flipping that heavy weight back. But you also, because we have head weight adjustability, you have the capability to achieve center gravities in between those as well. So that's the beauty of one of our models having 4F CG fitting, is that you can really test and optimize the center gravity depth to exactly what your needs are for launch and spin.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because it's a lot of weight that's kind of being moved around there a little bit, at least enough to make a lot of adjustments, and that performance will be altered a little bit. But there's a lot of versatility with that 4 model, I guess, in the series, right, versus past TS4, TSI4. That I think it's going to start to grow a little bit. I know it's a little bit more of a quote unquote niche, I guess, in that sense, where a GT2 and GT3 will still be, I guess, the popular, or the model most often in players' bags. But I think there's a possibility that GT4 could be a sneaky, often picked item this year for golfers.
Yeah.
Last question I did have, this one was also submitted beforehand via Twitter DM from Sam, asking, should people that were played in TS2 before and TSR2, should they assume GT2 is right for them, or has there been some changes made to whether it's the build or construction that might not necessarily, I guess, guarantee or make sure that one's the right one for them, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I think that obviously my first recommendation would be go see an expert fitter at Second Swing or a Titleist preferred fitting partner, because you can absolutely unlock your best performance optimization through a custom fitting. But if you're a TSI2 user, TSR2 user, GT2 is a great place for you to start. That's how we do our comparison and benchmark testing as we're seeking to deliver new products to the market. It's, well, how do we beat TSR2, right? We know that GT2 needs to elevate performance in all areas, and we've done that with GT2 over TSR2. So I think that that's a great place for him to start. But also through your fitting, I always tell players to hit all 3 models if you have the opportunity to, just so that you know what each performance can deliver to you, and then you can make an educated decision about which one you want to dive deep into your custom fitting with.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we actually do have one more here. We actually have a comment. Actually, one of our fitters, James, is watching this, and so he has a comment here as well. Switching to the GT2, what changes to the settings, loft, shaft, etc. did you make? And then what are you guys seeing in terms of common trends of players going from GT2 to GT3 or vice versa versus, say, TSR? What kind of adjustments are you seeing there?
Yeah, I think for the most part, all of the models are slightly lower spin than where they were with TSR. So if you find a player that was really at that low spin threshold, then we see setting adjustments with our SureFit hosel system to move from A1 to D4 to add a little bit of loft. Or you sometimes see if a player is very particularly sensitive to visual face angle, you'll see a move from perhaps a 9 degree to a 10 degree. But that's for a player that was really optimal from a launch and spin characteristic to start. And even with those setting adjustments, you see that they're improving their trajectory, so they're improving their carry and total distance through the technology. We're also seeing for the players that are not, optimal from a launch and spin perspective, they're seeing great speed advancements through the aerodynamics, through the face technologies, through the center of gravity positions, and being able to optimize that for them. And then launch and spin, being able to see that spin reduction is leading to significant distance gains over TSR.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, that's been the common theme from our fitters so far. Has just been the speed and distance gains for sure, but then also the performance on those slight miss hits has been fantastic as well. There's the result of that, over a group of shots is a lot more consistency. So that's about what I have here, Stephanie. I know we've taken up a lot of your time already. We'll let you get back to it. I know you're busy with the launch still ongoing here. So we want to thank you for your time today, Stephanie. It's been awesome to learn a little bit more about really the what's under the hood of Titleist GT, both drivers and Fairway Woods. And so golfers, if you've just joined, you can obviously, this will be live on the YouTube channel here shortly. You can watch back the entire conversation. And then also make sure you go schedule a fitting for Titleist GT driver, Fairway Wood, or both. And as we've alluded to today, you'll unlock some more performance. So Steffi, thank you so much again for joining.
Thank you, Drew, and thanks everyone at Second Swing. We appreciate your support, and we hope everyone really enjoys the performance of GT.
At Second Swing, we know it's not you, it's your clubs. That's why we offer over 100,000 new and used golf clubs and a team of experts who help you find the perfect option for both your swing and your budget. Customize your bag with a tour-level fitting, then trade in your current clubs to save even more on your upgrades. Change your game in store or online at secondswing.com.